Hello and welcome to the Calm Waves podcast. I'm Dallas Cowan. I am joined by Dustin Stanton. I am so excited for this episode. Dustin and I met through another buddy who actually is on the podcast as well, Andy. If you haven't listened to that podcast, Andy Vickers, that's how we met. And Dustin and I have had some just awesome conversations over the last a couple months just about mental health and cognitive health and just helping athletes in general with all of those. So Dustin, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to kind of dive in.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Dallas. I'm excited to be here. What's up, everybody?
So first, we'll just jump right into it. So you played football at a very, very high level. You played a position that is esteemed in the football world, which is offensive lineman. Offensive lineman. I think the phrase that I always say with offensive lineman is, if your name is called, you did something wrong. It's
That's
one
right.
of those positions that you don't really get a lot of accolades for. If you're boring the game, you did your job. So tell me a little bit about like how you from high school to college, kind of an origin story of like who you are, how you got here, and like kind of like what you're working on today.
Yeah, definitely, man. I fell in love with being an offensive lineman, but that's definitely not where I started. Never in my wildest dreams thought I would be an offensive lineman, let alone O-Lineman in the NFL. It's so funny. My nickname in high school growing up was Noodle, because I was like long. I was always 6'6", so I was so tall and skinny. So if back then, if you would have said, one day you'd be an offensive lineman in the league, it would have been a joke, right? Everybody kind of would have laughed. So it's awesome how life goes, but it's hilarious. It's funny where you end up. But yeah, so as an offensive lineman through college and the NFL, played all the spots on the O-line, so center, guard, and tackle. In the league, I was with Cincinnati Bengals and the Dallas Cowboys. And then in college, played for the Oregon State Beavers. And so I retired from the NFL in 2020. And I got to college in 2012. And that's when I was a freshman in college. And when going to Oregon State, I was a tight end. So that's how I started. I was a tight end in high school, went to a tiny high school, a nowhere town. We weren't on the map growing up. Like I was a nobody starting out. So I got on the field and would never leave during a game, right? We were that small. So I played both ways. So I was a tight end and I was a linebacker, kind of defensive end hybrid, special teams, the whole thing. And it was just kind of something you did in the hometown. Was play football after school sort of thing. But, it was like my sophomore year of high school that I realized I might kind of be good at football. So I really dove in and gave it my all. Was always stoked about academics and that sort of thing. Football was like, man, this could be a fun way of getting out of the hometown sort of thing. And moving on and kind of following the flow, the river, the adventure of life. And it was. So I became, by the time I was really a junior, but my junior and senior year, I became, one of the highest ranked tight ends in the nation coming out of high school. I can't remember. I was like top 10 in the state of Washington, which is where I grew up, like an hour north of Seattle. Then I got to Oregon State. My sophomore year at Oregon State, we had a bunch of offensive linemen go down in spring ball because of injuries. So the coaches there, who I admired a ton at the time, it was Coach Mike Riley. He was the head coach, and Coach Kavanaugh was the offensive line coach. If you know anything about football, you know those names. And so they came to me and they were like, "You're not going to be a tight end anymore. You're going to play offensive line." And I was like devastated because at the time I had like this long curly hair flowing out of my helmet. I had a six pack. I was 6'6", 250 pounds. I was ready to have my breakout season as a tight end in the Pac-12 and all this stuff, right? I was like full of myself, full of my ego. And they come to me and they're basically, what I hear is like, you're not gonna catch first downs, you're not gonna catch touchdowns anymore. You're not going to be the quote unquote face to the program. You're going to learn how to block, and you're going to get fat, and you're going to weigh like 330 pounds, and that's going to be it. Right. And so I was thinking about quitting. I was thinking about transferring. But, with faith as a foundation of mine, so through prayer and through conversation with people that I hold dearly in my life, I decided to take on that challenge.
Mm.
And it's kind of like the rest is history. I was able to, it was a wild ride. I gained like 44 pounds of muscle in 6 months, 6 pounds of fat. So at that time I was right around 300 pounds. And I was like, I completely transformed. And it was unbelievable. I was studying entrepreneurship at Oregon State. So it wasn't a light load there. I was working out twice a day, eating 10,000 calories a day, learning a whole new position, and I eventually, but the biggest thing out of that, for me in that journey was I was no longer doing it for myself. Like I put the team kind of above me and this greater purpose and this greater mission where it wasn't just about Dustin Stanton. It wasn't even about football. It wasn't even about Oregon State. It was like, there's something bigger than myself at play here. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this to help as many people as I can and inspire as many people as I can, whatever that may look like, So ended up becoming a captain, a leader of the Oregon State program as an offensive lineman. And then, started working out for the combine, for pro day, for the draft. Ended up going undrafted to the Cincinnati Bengals, which is not a place you wanted to be at that time. This was in 2016, and I'm starting at the bottom of the totem pole at one of the worst teams that you could have gone to at the time. Right, this was not the Bengals that they are today. Was there for a year, ended up getting cut, and then the offensive line coach that had been at Cincinnati for 25 years. He's like one of the most tenured position coaches in the league. He went over to Dallas. He switched with the Dallas boys offensive line coach. And so I had already been cut at that point, and he was kind of pulling for me the whole time. I was at Cincy. I was kind of his guy, but politics and all this stuff. So as soon as he got the call, he kind of called me up and had me come over to Dallas with him. So that's how I ended up coming to Dallas. And then in Dallas, man, I was like humbled again. And obviously, I'm making a long story very short.
Yeah, absolutely.
But was playing the best football of my life at Dallas and just loving it. Great locker room, amazing offensive line there. I was running with the twos, mainly at center and guard. But Travis Frederick at the time, he was going through his sickness. So it was me and Joe Looney kind of holding it down at center and guard. And we were playing the Arizona Cardinals, funny enough. Actually, Dallas you're coming from Arizona.
I'm in Arizona. Yep.
So we were playing Arizona at home, and just terrible knee injury.
Yeah.
Had a really, really bad knee injury. And I was always the type that would play through anything, right? I was always blessed. My career was always blessed with injuries. Never a big, nothing huge. But the smaller stuff, the surgeries in the off season, that sort of thing. But so when it happened, I knew something was wrong, and I had to leave the game and all this stuff. But it was like, I'll be back in like a month or two or whatever. Not a big deal. Blah blah blah. Well, that was the last play that I would ever play in my life. That was a career-ending injury. A ton of complications in the rehab. I had to go multiple surgeries. I had an infection, the whole gambit. So I was on injured reserve. I was on IR with the Cowboys for over a year. I had signed a 2-year contract with them, and I was on IR for about a year of it. It shook me, right? It made me question. It was a crisis of belief throughout that process. It was like, why me? I've always been an underdog kind of coming out and all this stuff. So I always was the guy that was like the first one in, the last one out, try to do everything right and all this stuff. And it was like, me? Really? Come on. Like playing the best football of my life at that moment. So it was one of those hard lessons of life. So that whole journey that kind of was capitalized with the career-ending injury got me super passionate about helping and serving as much as I can. Athletes primarily, but people in general. Everything that I do with, we'll talk a little bit about Athlete ER, I think, and I've got another kind of contractor gig that I do with advising and consulting, and then I coach high school football, and all these different things that I do are literally just to help people and support people empower themselves to find their full potential in their life. And with athletes, we do it with Athlete ER, we do it more in the mind, the mindset and the mental health side of things. And so, in 2020, I was at about 85, 90% with the knee. And I had in the league, if you're not an asset, you're a liability, right? And I had become kind of a liability for the Cowboys. And so I was nearing the end of that contract, and my agent and I knew that. What they will do is they will clear you, you'll get your physical done, and they'll clear you just to cut you, right? And we knew that was going to happen. That's how it goes. So I had about 6 different workouts lined up with 6 different teams across the league. And this was right around the end of that 2019-2020 season. So everybody knows what happened in March of 2020, right? So literally, I get cut, or I get cleared. A couple hours later, I'm eating lunch at the facility. Some guy that I've never met before from the Cowboys comes down and cuts me. And so I clear up my locker, but we're good. We're ready to go because we know we've got these workouts lined up. Well, the workouts weren't going to happen for another couple weeks because everyone was finishing the season, and you kind of start that free agency stuff after the Super Bowl and everything. Well, a week and a half after that, COVID hit, and so everything got canceled. And so that's when I decided to hang up the cleats, and that was 4 years ago. And the first, definitely year and a half was me trying to navigate, what was next. And so my former sports psychologist and I, Mina Stemfle, she's based out of Munich, Germany. Her and I partnered up, and we created this company to help athletes on the mental side. Since then, we've grown the company. We've got about 20 practitioners that are all former professional athletes from different sports and different backgrounds who, since retiring, they have become really passionate about sports psychology and the mind and working with flow, energy flow, and breath work, and all this stuff that amounts to what we believe is an optimal human being, an optimal athlete. So anyway, it's kind of long, but that's the short version. There's so much to pack in there.
So much
But
going
that's
on
kind
there.
of, yeah, that's a little bit of the background and kind of how I got to where I am now.
Well, it sounds like you've really embraced this, helping mentality all throughout your career. Like, no matter what, it's like ingrained in who you are. How was that conversation with going from, back in college, going from, hey, I'm going to be a tight end to the offensive lineman? Like, how did that go down? Like,
yeah, it was leaving spring ball, because that's when all those offensive line injuries happened, was during spring ball. So spring, you have it's kind of like a fall camp in the spring, and then you break for a couple months, and then you get into the season. So spring is just kind of like to stay fresh in the quote unquote off season. And we happened to have a lot of injuries happen there, like big injuries on the O-line. So that was the timing of this. And for me personally, so I redshirted my freshman year. And then, so that was the full year of redshirting as a tight end. And then this was my real first year. And when you redshirt in college, you're preparing, right? You're like, for me, it was gaining more muscle, learning the playbook, maturing and all this stuff. So by the time spring of technically my sophomore year, right? But my freshman year playing football for the Beavs, I was ready, dude. I was like I said earlier, 250 pounds, rocked up, knew the playbook like the back of my hand. I kind of paid my dues of being on the scout team my freshman year, that sort of thing. So I'm thinking, surely, I mean, I know that we have some offensive linemen go down. Obviously, I'm not ignorant. I'm there on the team. I'm like, surely they're not going to ask me to be the tight end that becomes the offensive lineman. I'm ready to go. And the reason why, like I said, coming out of high school, I was pretty high up ranked. It's not like I was kind of bottom of the totem pole by any means. I was on a full ride scholarship, highly ranked coming out of high school, that sort of thing. I was younger. I was one of the youngest tight ends in the room, and I had really broad shoulders. I've always had broad shoulders. So they looked at me and they're like, he's young, he's malleable, and we can put a bunch of weight on him. And he's a good guy. He'll probably say yes. Yeah, he's ready to become an offensive lineman. And so that conversation was Coach Mike Riley and Mike Kavanaugh bringing me into Coach Mike Riley's office and telling me, here's the situation, here's what we're thinking. And Coach Cav, the offensive line coach, I'll never forget this conversation because they were like, it's funny, like in college and NFL, you got it. A lot of times there's a lot of, and in life too, people will say things, right, to get you to do stuff, right? I think a lot of people listening in will probably have experienced that, but I really respected Mike Riley and Kavanaugh. And they both told me, they were like, look, and they've been in football forever, right? And they've been in the league, like they've coached so many guys. They looked at me and they were both like, look, we think you could be an extremely good offensive lineman. And we would not be, we wouldn't do this if we didn't think you could be successful at this, And so that was cool. But since we were leaving spring ball, they said, we'll give you, I think it was like a week, they're like, we'll give you a week to decide if you want to do this, and then, let us know. Because a lot of times, a guy will go, especially now, maybe that's something we talk about later with this, the portal and, all this college
100%.
stuff. But yeah, I was devastated. But, for me, it was really this much deeper walk with God. And it wrecked me, but it built me up in my faith slowly over time. But there was a moment where God gave me a vision. Like he gave me a vision and a feeling. It's really hard to articulate these things and talk about, an experience, right? But it was like a vision and a feeling at the same time that manifested in almost like a prophetic thing. And it was me as an offensive lineman. Now, at the time, like this was never on my radar, right? So I could see and feel me being an offensive lineman, but it was like what I really saw was me helping the community, like giving back to the community as this captain and leader. And so right after I had that moment with God, I called Coach Riley and I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. Sign me up. And he was like, let's go, dude. Like, cause they're like, they told me, they were like, we think if we know who you are the way we think we do, we have a good feeling about you going to the league eventually as an offensive line. So it was kind of cool, how everything kind of played out.
That's great. I mean, I think in life we always have these like hard conversations that happen, and especially in sports. I mean, I've been cut from teams. I've changed positions, all that kind of stuff in college too. So not the level that you were at, but but the level that I was at of trying to navigate of, do I keep playing, or what does that look like? And those are hard. Those are very hard. Out of those conversations that you've had, you've been cut at different levels and all those different things. Which one would you say was the hardest?
I think the hardest process from my decision, I don't know. The hardest, like that time in college was probably the hardest moment of my life because it was a combination of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a crisis of belief. It was physical. It was mental. It was spiritual. Like I had to go to therapy in college because one of my jobs was to eat 10,000 calories a day. And I was getting anxiety from having to eat that much.
So for those who don't know, like me, how much is 10,000 calories a day?
Okay, I always tell people it's one thing to eat 10,000 calories McDonald's a day. Yes. It's another thing to eat 10,000 healthy calories a day, right? It is so much food. It is so much food because it is healthy, right? You can eat way less McDonald's and get to 10,000, right? So when you're eating chicken and beef, and all these, and you got to cook it right, it's got to be the right stuff. And thank God, right? We had at Oregon State, we had Valley Football Center, right? So we had a cafeteria, we had chefs and all that stuff, which is amazing, incredible. However, I was constantly eating. So like in entrepreneurship, as a pro school in business classes, right? You start to there's like 30 people in each class, right? So you start to get to know people at the business school at Oregon State. It starts becoming intimate, and people know you, and you're doing different classes and all this stuff with the same people. And people already knew who I was, but they knew what I was doing. It was big. It was huge news at Oregon State, right? It was all over the papers and all this stuff, and that I was transitioning to offensive line. So I got to be known. I would show up to every class, and my backpack was more of a lunch pail than anything else, because I would get to every class and I would start unpacking like 3,500 calories of food, for that class. So everyone knew I just had to eat all the time. But we were waking up. I tell people the story. We would set our alarms, because I was doing this with a couple other guys that were on the weight gain program. We would set our alarms for 1:30 a.m. and we would wake up at 1:30 and take out a pre-made 2,800 calorie shake, chug it, and then throw your thing on the nightstand and go right back to bed. So it was constantly eating. And when you do it, I mean, I believe there was something. For me, it was God, and it was the Spirit, right? There was something that, because I would talk to the trainers and they'd be like, "How are you doing this?" For a while, people were like, what are you taking?" And to this day, it's like it was all obviously natural, but it was almost 50 pounds of muscle in like 5.5 months, right? And so there was something that, and you could call it grit, you could call it aspiration, you could call it tenacity, whatever you want, intentionality. But I'll say this: it's amazing what we can do when we work at what we want. You know what I mean? And when it's something that's greater than ourselves. But
It's amazing.
it was a trip. And then, that question, I think the career-ending injury, me having to retire, right? Like, I can no longer do this, was obviously physically, it was hard physically, because now I'm at the point, I was 330 pounds. Now it's like the opposite. Now it's like, okay, I got to lose this weight and I got to get my knee back. But the mind, man, it messed with my mind, because it was like, and I've always been a pretty aware dude, I think, right? Humbly speaking, I always knew football would end, obviously. Like, I knew that I would probably not play this game very long, even if I played for 10 years, like that's a long time in the league, especially for an offensive lineman. So in the back of my mind, it was always like, I'm going to leave this game. No one thinks it happens as fast as it does. And no one thinks you're going to have to, we were talking about earlier, like when, how'd that hard conversation go? Or like, it's when things don't go our way. That's what's so hard about this stuff. Obviously. I mean, it's just like, it's so simple, but it's very profound. It's like, it didn't go the way that I wanted. Well, it's hard. That's hard when it's something you want so bad. And that's a big reason I'm so passionate about helping former players too, or retiring players. And I know you are as well. Get their feet back underneath them, right? The analogy that's used so often with former guys is, or just professional athletes, men and women in general, is it's like they've been thrown into the open ocean, and they're being bashed by the waves and the storm, and they're just trying to find land again. Because it's like everything who they were and everything that they knew they were and who they are and what they were doing is gone, and it's just like, it's almost impossible to prepare for, even if you're a humble person, like even if you're not full of your ego or that's your identity. It's just, some level it is, how could it not be? So on the mental side, man, that was so tough, because it's just like, even when you're aware, it's like, man, it's really, I couldn't identify as anything else, because I probably wouldn't have been as successful as I was at that thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, you bring up a good point that I think is for athletes. I mean, if you're an athlete, if you're a business person, everything is identity. And, from sports standpoint, it's really easy to wrap ourselves around an identity, because it's like, oh, I'm a football player, and you're like, I'm a Dallas Cowboy. Like, it's this pinnacle of type of a thing. So how is it that you were able to process that transition? And then how is it that you've been able to help people with that transition? Because I don't care if you're a college athlete, a high school athlete, whenever you say, I got to hang this up, like, I'm just no longer going to play this game anymore at this level. I mean, I played at a, NAIA, college level, and I had a good transition. For those who don't know, my last baseball game was the day that I got engaged to my wife. So it was this very much of this, like, all right, this is gonna happen. I was very okay with that. Just have this new place in life. But I've also had buddies who, can't watch baseball anymore, because they're just like, I could have been there. Like
Right.
or they have buddies that are there and they're like, I was just as good as him. Why is it that I didn't get this? And it was because of this coach or this thing and all these different things. So all that bundle that somebody has, how is it that you were able to transition and to where you are today? Like what are the healthy things that you helped you? And then how do you help other athletes just to,
Hmm.
if someone's going through a transition or at least preparing for that too?
Hmm.
Because even if you're an elite athlete right now, it's gonna happen.
Hmm.
It may be 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, it may be 6 months from now.
Right.
So what are the things, kind of the building blocks that you do? Because I think this is a really important conversation because
Hmm.
we talk about, a lot of things after the fact, but what are things that people can do to prepare right now for that?
Yeah. Yeah. It is very important. And not just with athletes, right? Like you mentioned, like with anybody, because there's a foundation, like there's a core
Mhm.
to all of this, right? To our lives. The short answer to your question, I think, is community. Community is huge. Coming out, thinking about coming out or transitioning, whatever it is, community just in general in life. And because with community comes support, comes wisdom, knowledge, experience, and empathy. So empathy is a huge word that we use at Athlete ER. We have the capacity to, and we're able to empathize with current or former athletes because we've all been there. We've all been current or former or are now former athletes, right? And we've gone through the process firsthand and we've had that experience. And on top of that, obviously, this is where kind of the value proposition comes in, is we've built programs around it. And so we can help, we can support that. And for me personally, like Joe Hawley and the Heart Collective was absolute blessing for me. That was kind of that community coming out. So Joe played for about 8 or 9 years. There was if you guys, anybody listening, if you're interested in checking Joe out, his story is all over the place. Like the NFLPA did a big story on him. Um, he walked away from the game himself. He was about to sign another contract, walked away from millions of dollars. He was a center. He played offensive line for the Falcons and the Buccaneers, and he's a good buddy of mine now. But he walked away from millions of dollars because he wasn't fulfilled playing football anymore. And he was awesome. He was an awesome offensive lineman. He gave all of his stuff away. He bought a Sprinter van and adopted a dog named Freedom, and he hit the open road in America. And for 2 years, he traveled the country out of his Sprinter van and kind of found himself, figured out what he was going to do next. And one of those endeavors was starting this program, this community called the Heart Collective, HART. And since then, he's pivoted and he's doing stuff outside of Austin, like a retreat center and stuff like that. So check him out. And Joe's an amazing dude. But anyway, at the time, the Heart Collective was for former athletes, specifically former professional football players that were transitioning, that were retiring. So we would go on retreats, and we had a community. We would do calls. Joe would do kind of one-on-ones, or he would pair us up with guys, and it became just a friend group, right? So I've got all these guys now, all current NFL guys who I knew before or didn't know before, in my phone, right? Where we call, text, back and forth, all this stuff. But that time of me retiring was huge, just to spend time with these guys, and then Joe, who did it himself and kind of learned the process and all that stuff. So community is huge because of that support, because of that wisdom, because of that knowledge. So, if you're in that place or approaching that place, reach out, reach out to Dallas or whoever, because there are communities, right? You are not alone. And then part of, for me, personally, is just understanding, like realizing you are not alone. Like anybody who's ever played sports professionally, amateur, college, eventually you don't play sports, right? And usually it's like you finish in your 30s and you still have the rest of your life. So here's where the blessing, the gratitude and the blessing start to come, right? This new paradigm, this new understanding or perception of looking at this situation. Okay. This is what helped me the most, is asking the question. Two questions, really. Number one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein is, the most important question that a person can ask themselves is if the universe is friendly or not, right? Because the answer to that question will dictate your reality. So it's kind of like, do you look at the world with the glass half full or glass half empty, right? Henry Ford said it by saying, if you believe that you can and you believe that you can't, either will be correct, right? Something not verbatim, but basically it's the way you look at the world. It's your perception of it, right? And so you have to shift that way of looking at it and asking this second question of, what if everything is actually happening for you, right? For your greatest good. Okay. So like, how could this possibly be working for me? Or how could this be good for me? Like having a career ending injury with 3 surgeries, an infection, not being able to play football. Well, that has led me to so many blessings. Like now, because I can empathize and resonate with people and I've been through it myself, I can help people. I coach high school football down the street here in Frisco, Texas. And that all happened. Everything happened because of everything happening the way that it did, right? And I always say things only make sense in reverse. But if you're approaching retirement, or if you're in retirement right now, that transition, this is happening for you. You have the rest of your life, right? This is the first day of the rest of your life sort of thing. And it's a great day to have a great day, right? Like what is next? Like, what is God asking you to create, or where is he going to place you, or the universe, or whatever you abide by? What is next, right? Because what are you going to go change the past? You want to just stay in that place the rest of your life? No, you're meant to grow, right? You are meant to move forth into the rest of your life, and it's supposed to be amazing. It's supposed to be glorious. It's supposed to be an adventure, and it's supposed to be out of love and service for the world. It's not supposed to be out of fear, right? It's not supposed to be out of a lack mindset. It's supposed to be out of an abundance mindset, right? You're literally on the path that you're on. So, that I think community and the way you're thinking, those two in combination is how you can start looking at your situation in a different lens. And I think there's a ton. I know if you're listening and you're in a place like that, I know we would love to help you, for example.
Absolutely.
And if it's not us, somebody else, right? You can find those people that can help you with that, right? It's out there. So yeah, man. And so now the way that I look at it is, it's always funny, Dallas, I think you and I have talked about this before, but I can't remember, but maybe I'm not old enough yet. I don't know. But it's funny when people say like, oh, that was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it was like the worst thing that's ever happened to them. I don't know if I don't know if I would like to necessarily go back and have the exact same thing happen to me the way that it did. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I learned all this and now I can, but I do know if things did not happen the way that they happened in my life, in my past, I would not have the understanding, I'll stretch it and say enlightenment, as humbly as I can say, or the awareness, right? The empathy that I have for people. And that's not just with football. That's through breakups, I've had a broken heart in my past. Would I want to go through a heartbreak again? No. Would I want to go through a heartbreak again so that I can help somebody else? Yes. Now, like my future son, let's say, is dealing with a heartbreak. Well, if I've never gone through a heartbreak, I'm not going to know how to help him. I'm not going to know how to mentor, right? So, these things are here to teach us a lesson. And I think asking that question is like, what if this is actually how things are supposed to go? And when you ask that question, you can answer with, maybe it is. You start to find the blessing in it. You actually start to be grateful for it because you're realizing that it's building perseverance in you. It's building your character. And this perseverance and this character building is actually leading to a hope, where this hope comes out of service and loving others and somehow leaving a legacy for this life. Ultimately, that's how we get to that place,
Love it. I mean, I love everything you said about that. I think that was the word that you said was hope. I mean, if you can lead people to that, I mean, and it's being able to be, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic about the world? I think sports, sometimes you have a little more of a pessimistic because it's kind of like a chip on your shoulder. I got to prove them wrong kind of a thing. which helps motivate. I mean, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
are you motivated through that? Uh, there's a great, I don't know, do you know the movie Chariots of Fire?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been
So,
a while.
so it's a great movie. Whoever's listening, watch Chariots of Fire. Great music. It's a
Yeah.
timeless classic. But
Yep.
it's the story of two runners, and one runner is in the early Olympics from England, and one runner is basically doing it for himself. He's trying to, uh, he's just, I'm going to win this. I'm going to do this. And the other runner actually has a perspective of doing it for God. I mean, one of my favorite quotes from it is, his sister's going, "You need to be a missionary." And he goes, "God made me for a purpose, but he also made me fast." And so, they both win. They both win. I give away the thing. They both win, but the biggest thing was, um, the one runner who was doing it for himself is holding his gold medal, and he's sitting at a bar, and he's like, "What's next?" And kind of in this like depression kind of standpoint. And the other guy, this missionary, is like, "I got my gold medal. Now I'm going off and doing my purpose. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this was just for a
Right.
time." And so I think in the moment, it's always hard.
Right.
I mean, in the moment of your injury, in the moment
Mm-hmm.
of having that conversation, okay, I'm being cut. Like, it's always hard, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what all those things are. But if you can be able to grieve, but know that I can build off of this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the opportunity outside of this?
Which is why it's such a process that, I know you feel the same way. That's why I'm so passionate about helping people wherever they are in their
Mhm.
journey, but as early as we can, right?
Of
Because
course.
like, for example, like a big slogan, I guess, that we use at Athlete ER is, if only we knew then what we know now,
Yeah.
right? So I wish somebody in a mentor standpoint earlier. I had mentors, but it was later on that I found them or they came into my life. I wish early on there was more of, hey, the worldly success isn't the thing. And Jim Carrey has an awesome quote. He says, "I wish everybody could become rich and famous to realize that that's not it." Right? And it's so true, because I think that's where that's where we get hung up a lot, is like the comparison trap. And, we think these things or these accolades or whatever, the trophy from the race, we think these things are going to give us the fulfillment that we're looking for. And they never do. They never do. They can give fulfillment if it's not the thing that's on the pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not the only reason why we're doing it, right? If we're doing it for a deeper reason, that's where we can get fulfillment from worldly things. But if we only want the worldly things, guess what? They're going to let you down 100% of the time.
Well, let me ask you this, because you existed in a different world pre-NIL. So let me ask you this: do you think that there is more pressure now on college athletes today post NIL than pre NIL?
Mm.
Because the reason why my theory is because now these kids are being, I mean, it used to be scholarships. I mean, like, I played at NAIA school.
Mm.
I got a college scholarship. Cool. If I didn't strike the guy out, or if I didn't get the hit, it wasn't the end of the world. Like, it was like,
Right,
okay, it was, this thing. But
right,
now when you've got a kid who's going like, "Hey, we're paying you $100,000. You
yeah,
better perform. And by the way, you're 18 years old."
right,
Like, what do you
yeah.
think about that? That's a leading question, because I'm trying to get it to say, do you agree with me? But you actually played Division 1, at a very high level now, and with NIL. What's your opinion on all those
Dude, it's a great question. I haven't been asked like the pressure side of it. So I'll take the cheap way out, sort of, so to speak. I think that it falls in line with anytime we have the discussion of like more money and pressure. And what I mean by that is, I think now that the 18, 19, 20-year-olds are being paid upwards of, $500,000 to $1 million, more than $1 million, big paychecks. it exposes. That's what it does. It exposes what is truly inside. And the scary part about that is you're talking about teenagers. You're talking about 17 to 22-year-olds. So you can expect what is being exposed is ego. That's kind of my opinion around it. Therefore, their egos are going to see it as pressure, which I think is accurate. But why are they feeling the pressure? Why does it matter to them? Why is it a big deal? How do they respond to that pressure? Those are the things that I get worried about. Meaning, you should not feel, in a perfect world, in a vacuum, you should not feel more pressure to play better and get better grades or just do better in general because you're being paid more by the booster or by the program. Right? It's not bad to feel more pressure. But when you're being exposed, what is coming out, what is being exposed should be righteousness, right? Level-headedness, humility, these good, lasting things that will keep the foundation that you are firm. So the short answer is, yeah, I do think there's more pressure with this. How are the college student athletes responding is going to be vary depending on what's inside that. Like, if you're being paid almost as much or more as your coach, how do you respond, right? Do you still feel the pressure to respect that coach and listen to him, listen to the play call? Where if the coach wants to make this play call on this down and distance, I'm talking football right now, you're going to do it because you're putting the team above yourself. You trust that coach, whatever, right? Or are you going to feel so much pressure that you just do what you want to do out of ego because you're being paid more than the coach? I don't need to go to class. I'm not going to listen to them. I'm not going to do this. I'm making six figures. I'm making $1.5 million this year. So I think there is more pressure. I don't know if it's healthy. I wish it was more healthy. But I think that's where we're going to need some internal work going on. Yeah. We're going to need some healing, I think, and things will be much better than I see them going in these early stages of these deals where we're at.
Well, I think that's why it's so important of what you're doing, Athlete ER, which is helping these athletes have the resources and getting it early. I mean, that's what I've seen is it's being able to go, all right, if we're going to add these pressures, and it's mentally. I mean, it's not physically. We're not asking someone physically to do anything different. You're still running the same routes. You're still hitting the same ball. Like, you're mentally going, okay, now there's more pressure on you. You know, you got what you wanted. You know, you get paid now. You get all these different things. And there's the accolades. Like, okay, if I don't catch this ball, what's going to happen to my career? And it's happening at a much earlier age now.
Right.
It's not, it's not the guy who's, 23, 24 catching the ball for the Dallas Cowboys going, hey, I've got some years of experience now. I can handle this a little bit more. Yep. You got the 18-year-old.
Yep.
The 5-star recruit that's going, man, if I can't catch it, call it the yips. But it's all it's all that mental side of it. And how do you get somebody over it, or how do you deal with those anxieties? And I think
there's more noise than ever. Right? Especially for these younger athletes, there's so much noise around them. The access to everything, right? I mean, you can compare. It's so easy to compare yourself because it's all right there in your hand, right, on your phone. So you know what people are getting paid. You know what somebody's doing for their training. You know this. You know that. Like, it's accessible to you. So that manifests as all this chatter and this noise. Quite honestly, this BS that's going on in your head. And that's what you're doing, Dallas, is so important because, like, me using the comm box, for example, like, sifts through that noise, that external noise, and it's like, what's important? Like, what is important? Who am I? Like, are those thoughts that are leading to those feelings actually me? Are they coming from somewhere? Like, it smooths everything and it sifts through the BS. And it gets you, like, in tune and in touch with who I am and what I believe in based off of truth, right? For me, truth with a capital T.
Mhm.
It's like, no. This is who I am.
Mhm.
And it's because, I am love, right? And for me personally, that truth rises to the surface out of God's word, and so I can love people, I can serve people. But if you get caught up in the thoughts, the external stuff, it's like you don't know who you are. You don't know whose you are.
Yeah.
Things can start getting pretty chaotic in your head fast. And so anyway, I just want to I want to commend you, and like my experience with the Calm Box, man, it's like smooths those waters that's in your mind, so you can kind of get grounded into who you are again, and have a narrow focus and get focused on the right things that are going to get you to where you need to be and where your thought patterns need to be.
That's awesome. I love that you use it and it's been beneficial for you. And that's been the biggest thing. I think what I've wanted to provide these, people like you. I mean, you are very, say, solid in your, even before we met, very solid in your approach to mental health. Obviously you've gone to therapy, before, all those different types of things. But I think what the Calm Box is able to do, and what we're trying to do, is from the brain level,
Yeah.
which is actually like, okay, you've had wear and tear. I mean, you are, tight ends are banged up. I mean, there's a study out there that said that they put gyroscopes on a bunch of college football players, and they said tight ends actually had the most, I forget what they were measuring it with, but the most points, let's put it that way, from the gyroscope, because of all of their, their blockers, their tacklers, and they're also catchers.
Yeah,
so
true.
So, like, I have a lot of empathy for you too, because even though as healthy as you are, you've had some, things that have happened to you. And so I'm just so thankful that the Calm Box has helped from, kind of that brain level, that inside out. I think there's a lot of mental health things you can do that are outside in. Who am I? What's happening in my, my environment? How do I see it? And I'm going to try to change it from, the outside in.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is from the inside out, is actually going, all right, you may have anxiety because of something that has physically happened to you in the past. And those racing thoughts and those things that you're just trying to get through, even though you're meditating or you're trying to focus, you're doing these things, like, they just keep coming back. Like, what's going on? It's like, hey, your brain may need to be adjusted a little bit. We think of it like a car, like,
a little tune-up.
A little tune-up. Hey, do you realize your suspension's off? Let's fit your suspension. It's like, oh my gosh, fix my suspension. I feel so much better. Yeah, like, because it was
true.
And it wasn't you. That's the other part about it. It's there's this scene from Good Will Hunting, the famous thing. It's like, it's not your fault.
Right.
And you're like, I know, but when you come to accept that, that's where I feel a lot of empathy for these kids too, is because it's a lot of external pressure that is put on them that they may not be prepared for. And a lot of times it's not their fault.
Right.
And so that's where, we're coming at it, is, all right, let's get you the tools. Let's get you the insight you need and the availability, so that, you can strap on the Calm Box and get into that state, and you're going from the inside out. You're going the part of your brain that's going and going, we're turning that off.
Yep.
And you don't have to do anything. That's the biggest thing.
That's right. Yeah, dude, it's so interesting. We're all this way to some extent, where I'm just riffing off of, it's not your fault. Like before you and I connected, I didn't know anything like this was out there, specifically like this was out there. So I didn't know what I didn't know, basically. And we see that a lot with our clients in other ways of, like we were working with somebody, and it's things like this are pretty common, right? And the problem was studying the playbook. A husband, 3 children, they had been, free agency was a thing in the past, so they're kind of like nomadic almost. It's a little hectic, a little crazy. And it was like, man, on a Wednesday afternoon at practice, it's like I know I'm studying like crazy, but I know 50%. I feel like I know 50%. It's like half the playbook, half the plays. I just forget. I don't know what it is, but I'm watching film and I'm taking notes and I'm asking questions and all this stuff. Well, long story short, we figured out that it was sleep. That's all it was. The person, he wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
He thought he was, right? And the reason why was because he was stressed and had anxiety because of a whole other thing. It had nothing to do with sports. It had a little bit to do with family, a normal life thing, right? And that's what it was. It was sleep. It was like, okay, how about we take an hour off of studying at night and we replace that with sleep?
Wow.
So he started getting, really what it amounted to was about an hour and a half more of sleep, and the feeling during practice went away. Like, he was more sharp. He remembered the plays. And anyway, the reason I say that is because, like, that's kind of how the comm box was for me. It was like, I didn't even think about, like, I thought I should be staying up studying an hour more playbook. It's like, I didn't even think, like, I was like, no, I need to up my therapy sessions. I need to do more. I need to meditate for 20 more minutes a day, or I need to whatever, right? Whatever external modality it was. And then Dallas comes along and is like, no, dude, put these on your ears for 30 minutes and just read a book.
Yeah.
Right? Or before bed. And man, it's like, yeah, I could go on and on about what you're doing in Combox, but it's like, since the last time we talked, which I think was like a week or two ago, I just feel more clear. I'm sleeping better. I feel more clear. And so when somebody asks me a question, instead of sitting there like, I don't remember, or I don't know, it's like, oh, dude, I know the answer, or I remember that thing. Like, I just feel way more crisp and clear, more clarity. So anyway, check it out, guys.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
Thank you. I love it. I mean, that it keeps me going for conversations like this, when it's just like people being able to be helped and, through this process. I think as we kind of like wrap this up, we need a part 2 of this, by the way. Like, we could go on for a long time. This is turning into a Joe Rogan podcast at some point. It's going to be like 3 hours long of us just talking.
I love it, man.
So we're going to do a part 2 of this for sure.
That's awesome.
Just to kind of like wrap this up, question I have for you is, where do you see the future of, what do you build, like, mental health? And I'm going to put in the notes here the link to Athlete ER. We're partnering with them. Like, we love what they're doing, but where do you see the future? Like, what do you want it to be? Like, what is something that you're going, I think this is what an athlete should have the support of. I know, we can say athlete, we can say entrepreneur, all these different things, but particularly what you're doing, what do you want the future to be?
Well, I appreciate you, man, for saying all that, by the way. You know how back in like the 70s and 80s, weightlifting and training was not online at all? So like football, for example, the NFL back in like the 80s, even in the off season, you would go home and like do nothing, like work or do whatever. There was no off-season program. There was no training. It was like you would just go pump some iron with your boys and shoot up steroids and then come back for fall camp. Literally, we're talking like 30 years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? I say that because I think we are on the precipice of mental health and mindset training to become part of the regime, the regiment. It's going to be part of the training program of athletes. So and I think we're closer than we think, right? Especially like Mina's over in Europe. It's coming online more so over there. The States are a little behind, but it's picking up, right? It's, the nutrition is here, I think. So you get your meal, you get your meetings, right? Whatever that looks like for your sport, meeting with your coaches, watching film, taking notes, preparing for the opponent. You go to the weight room, you have a whole workout, right? From a trainer, like a professional trainer who gives you your sport specific workout, right? And it's very detailed and specific sport movements for your position, for your sport, right? And that's what this has evolved into in 2024. It wasn't like that 20, 30 years ago. Then the next thing we think that you do in a day is go meet with your representative, your practitioner with Athlete ER, or you have a session with Dallas, or whatever that looks like for you. Right? You're training your brain and the way you're thinking and your mindset, just like you're training your body, just like you're doing everything else. Because, and this is why we're so passionate about it, there are so many studies and so much research being done about how important and how much of a powerhouse your mind is and your brain is, dictates so much in your body, in your performance, and in your life. So that's where we think things are going. We want to be that resource for athletes. We want to empower people to find their full potential. We believe now more than ever, maybe, which is why it's a wild paradox of how many resources you have around you, right? And technology and all these advancements in our day-to-day world, it can be a double-edged sword almost. And the reason I say that is because I think a lot we have kind of, especially in this country, in this culture, society, if you want to say, but the modern day human, I think we're starting to forget the power that we actually do have in between our ears, basically. We are not, like, when we work with athletes, and all of us practitioners at Athlete are felt this. That's why we're so passionate about doing this. We felt, there's got to be more. Like, what am I there's just something missing, right? What is that thing? Like, I can't do this, or I can't get to this place. It is more than possible. It's more than possible. And like 99% of the time, it's something with your thinking. It's the way you're looking at the world, right? It's a block. It's a subconscious block, or whatever that thing is. That's where we think things are going. We're starting to see it in Europe with teams, right, where they have psychologists, multiple of them. They have these mindset teams that are working with the athletes on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. We think that's where things are going, because more and more of the case studies and the research is coming online of how important the mind and the brain is. And there are so many different, like, quantum physics research studies that I could talk about that'll just blow your mind. It's amazing, like consciousness, and the way we see the world based off of what our brain is doing and our programming and our past experiences or past traumas or all the things, right? And you are more than capable. You're more than capable of living the life that you desire. You really do. Wherever you're at, it's possible. Okay. And we get in our own way based off of external things that happen that start to program us in certain ways. So, man, and when you break through barriers or obstacles with an athlete, for example, it's insane what transpires on the court or on the field or in their sport. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like you hit this optimal performance button, and the sky's the limit. So yeah, man, I appreciate you, talking about us and the work that we're passionate about, because it's super important, and we just want to help. We just want to help and serve and love people, man, just like I know you do.
Absolutely. No, I love it. I love what you guys are doing, and I think you're right. I mean, we see the future of mental health or in sports is that it's going to the gym. I mean, it's either you're talking with a trainer, you've got somebody doing it. And, I think we're super passionate about that too. So I think it's getting closer. There's still some barriers that need to, be broken through from probably more of an institutional standpoint than I think people need to kind of take this a little more seriously. In the AD office and people like that. And some people just don't know how to do it. I mean, it's like, it's never been done before, the new frontier, but it's needed.
Right.
And so I think that's super exciting too, because it's like, all right, we don't know what's going to happen. It's kind of a new adventure, but let's go.
Right.
So we're super passionate, and I know there's these guys like you, stuff that we're working on. Just as we can collaborate together and build up each other, it's only going to help us more, bringing in the end result which we want, which is that athlete to have the full mental and brain support that they need. And 100%. They can walk into a locker room and go, I didn't know I needed this, and now I do.
Right.
So that's the most important thing. So
right.
Well, Dustin, thank you so much. Again, I know we could talk for another hour about just life and
Right.
stuff. So we'll do a part 2 for sure. Where's the best place for someone if they wanted to reach out to you? Where do they reach out to you at?
Yeah, you're gonna put the Athlete ER link
Yep.
in the notes. So yeah, if anybody's interested, check out the website. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, so I'm active on those 2 places. But if you reach out to us through athleteer.com, you can connect with me there, or and the team. All of our practitioners are on there. So yeah, give it a look. But yeah, my LinkedIn, obviously just type in my name. You'll be able to find me there. And then Instagram is at Dustin Stanton _. And I keep up with both. So yeah, please reach out. And even if you just want to say hi, I'm there. I'm there for you. I know you're not alone. And God's got some huge plans for you. Like you're here, you're where you are for a reason. So if you feel like talking about that with me, I would love to meet you and talk to you.
That's awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you again. Again, this is the Calm Waves podcast, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Thanks, Dallas.
Thank you.